something huge has just gone down in Mexico, and it's triggered a wave of violence that's raising some terrifying questions about the future. You see, one of the world's most powerful cartel leaders is gone. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what happened, how we even got to this point, and what it all means for what's coming next. All right, so here's the headline. On February 22nd, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, who you probably know as El Mencho, was taken out. This guy was the phantom leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, the CJNG, one of the most powerful and frankly most brutal criminal organizations on the entire planet. And look, this wasn't just some random bust. This was a high-level joint operation between Mexico and the United States. And the cartel's response, it was immediate. And when I say immediate, I mean wow. A coordinated, violent, and absolutely terrifying counterattack. The cartel didn't scatter and run. Oh no, it basically declared war on the state itself. Ever since El Mencho's death, the CJNG has unleashed this horrific show of force, a full-blown campaign of terror across the state of Jalisco and even beyond. They're setting up blockades on major highways, lighting vehicles on fire, and launching direct assaults not just on security forces, but on civilians too. This isn't random violence, you know? This was a message. And all this, it brings us to the most crucial question of this whole explainer. When you look at this level of organized violence, you just have to ask yourself, how on earth did a group of criminals manage to transform itself into a full-blown paramilitary army, one that's capable of going toe-to-toe with a nation-state? To answer that, we've got to rewind the clock a bit, because the narco armies we're seeing today, they didn't just pop up out of nowhere. Their origins trace back to a fundamental shift that just changed the rules of the game forever. The real catalyst for all this change was a group called Los Zetas. They were formed back in the late 90s by deserters from Mexico's elite special forces, and they brought military discipline, counterinsurgency tactics, and a level of brutality the criminal world had just never seen before. These guys weren't just traffickers, they were soldiers. And you can really see how things just spiraled from there. Back in the 80s, Mexican cartels were basically just middlemen, transit routes for Colombian cocaine. But once Los Zetas hit the scene, everything changed. To even compete, every other cartel had to start militarizing. This kicked off a massive arms race in the 2000s, with all these groups actively recruiting police, soldiers, anyone with combat experience, turning themselves into these sophisticated fighting forces. So, you're probably wondering, where is all this high-powered weaponry coming from? Well, according to the Mexican government's own data, a staggering 70% of it flows south from the United States. It's a flow so massive they call it the Rio de Ferro, or the River of Iron. Military-grade weapons are bought with drug money in the U.S. and then smuggled right across the border. The other 30%? That comes from places like Central America and even diversions from within the Mexican military itself. But here's the thing. This kind of militarization doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? For decades, government policies, or maybe the lack of them, created the absolute perfect environment for these narco armies to grow and fester. For years, Mexico has been swinging between two totally different strategies. Back in 2006, the government launched the Kingpin strategy, basically an all-out war to cut the head off the snake by taking out cartel leaders. Tactically, it kind of worked, but strategically, it was a disaster. It didn't kill the cartels, it shattered them into dozens of smaller, even more violent little factions. The more recent hugs, not bullets strategy took the opposite approach, focusing on social issues. But according to the source material, this hands-off approach basically allowed powerful groups like the CJNG to consolidate their power and rearm without facing much resistance at all. And this non-confrontational stance, it's fiercely defended by the current administration. The president, Claudia Sheinbaum, was quoted as saying, "Fighting the narco war is illegal. It is an act of fascism." So that quote really highlights the official philosophy that has been shaping security policy. So if the official policy is non-confrontational, why in the world would they go after a target as massive as El Mencho? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The source material alleges that this high-stakes operation only happened because of intense external pressure, specifically from former U.S. President Trump, who had just recently accused Mexico of being controlled by narco-traffickers. So, you have this perfect storm, right? Fragmented cartels, seesawing government policies, and it was precisely in this chaos that one group didn't just survive, it thrived. And the guy at the top, El Mencho, his backstory is just, well, it's wild. He wasn't some narco prince born into the business. He started out as a poor avocado farmer, he migrated to the U.S. illegally, got arrested for drug trafficking, and was deported. And then get this, he joined the local police force. His experience on both sides of the law gave him the perfect, unique skill set to build a criminal empire from the inside out. And under his leadership, the CJNG became a global powerhouse. I mean, they have their own special forces unit, the Grupo Elite. They operate whole fleets of these heavily armored, homemade tanks they call Monstros. They seized control of the vital port of Manzanillo, making it their personal gateway for the Chinese chemicals they needed to flood the U.S. with fentanyl. They are, for all intents and purposes, a transnational corporation of crime.
So, the king is off the board. But don't think for a second this is the end of the story. In fact, what analysts are predicting is that this is just the beginning of a new and perhaps even bloodier chapter.
What happens next is probably going to unfold on 3 violent fronts. First, an internal civil war inside the CJNG itself, as Mencho's lieutenants all fight each other for the throne. Second, you're going to see attacks from rivals, like the Sinaloa cartel, who will see this chaos as a golden opportunity to grab territory. And third, and we're already seeing this, continued retaliation against the state, as the fractured cartel tries desperately to prove it's still in control. And really, this is what it all boils down to. While taking out El Mencho is, without a doubt, a massive tactical victory for Mexican and U.S. forces, it doesn't end the war. History has shown us, time and again, that removing the leader of a group this powerful just unleashes a power vacuum. It opens a brand new and far more unpredictable strategic chapter. Which leaves us with one final, chilling thought to consider. The world's most powerful cartel king has been removed from the board. But looking at the chaos that's already erupting and the massive power vacuum he leaves behind, you really have to wonder, has the war just begun?